Climate John Kerry and National Climate Advisor Gina McCarthy.
Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure to join all of you for what is the official launch of the U.S. Center here at COP26. And I just want to thank everyone across the U.S. government who made all of this happen. Over the next 2 weeks, we will be hosting dozens of conversations, bringing together hundreds of people here in Glasgow and thousands more online to step up our response to the climate crisis. As you saw from that video, tackling the climate crisis isn't the responsibility of any single agency or department in the U.S. government, because climate change doesn't only threaten our economy, our infrastructure, or our national security. It's a threat to all of them and more. In the past week, we have received two very powerful reminders of that fact. The first was a comprehensive report from the U.S. Director of National Intelligence. It laid out the evidence of how climate change is driving regional instability and straining nearly every aspect of human life, from food and water insecurity to migration patterns. I can attest from my own conversations with colleagues around the world that these are increasingly daily struggles that they're dealing with in their countries. And in our country, we also see the effects of climate change, including droughts in some places, floods in others, more intense storms, longer and more damaging wildfire seasons. The second recent reminder was the United Nations Annual Emissions Gap Report, which discussed the mounting effects of climate change on the most vulnerable people and communities around the world. We have a microphone issue. It made clear the imperative that we have before us to strengthen both our ambition and our action in this decisive decade if we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and prevent a climate catastrophe. For years, Americans from all walks of life, governors, mayors, activists, business leaders, have been doing the difficult daily work of reducing these emissions and building resilience in close coordination with friends around the world. Then, within hours of taking office on January 20th, President Biden rejoined the Paris Agreement. Soon after that, he convened 40 world leaders, including the world's 17 largest greenhouse gas emitters, for the Leaders Summit on Climate. There, he announced a bold new commitment from the United States, a 50 to 52% reduction in emissions by 2030. That target puts us on course to reach net zero by 2050. And Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry will talk more about how, here in Glasgow, we will lay out our path to get to that goal. President Biden also told his team to integrate climate action into everything we do across the U.S. government, not just in our domestic policy, which National Climate Advisor Gina McCarthy will speak to shortly, but also in our foreign policy, in our national security. This process is well underway at the State Department, thanks in large part to the leadership of John Kerry and his outstanding team. We've created new Foreign Service positions dedicated full-time to climate issues, one in every regional bureau and in critical posts overseas, including India and Brazil. And we're seeking funding to educate and train officers around the world on climate diplomacy. Here at COP26, that climate diplomacy will continue. Special Envoy Kerry will lay out in greater detail what we hope to accomplish here, but for now, let me just say that we're working with our allies and making tremendous progress. In just the past few months, we've mobilized the strongest and most concrete commitments ever put forward by countries to combat the climate crisis. We've substantially narrowed the ambition gap. More countries are setting bolder goals, and they're closer to where we need them to be. But we still have work to do. Too many countries still have not stepped up. And we shouldn't leave Glasgow without acknowledging that fact and without making clear our intention to strengthen climate ambition and climate action substantially in the months and years ahead. This is a decisive decade. We've got to make it count. Of course, this is not an issue that we can solve through national government action alone. We need civil society to continue leading the way, providing expertise, educating the public, building coalitions that hold policymakers like us to account. We need state and local governments to continue to develop and implement creative initiatives on the ground. And we need companies to make the investments that will get us to net zero emissions. That's the smart thing for business to do, and the right thing. The green economy is the future, and companies that make the right investments now will reap the rewards for years to come. Over the next couple of weeks, the U.S. Center will bring together leaders from across these sectors, government, business, civil society, to join forces on climate action. We'll address topics like the partnerships we're building to strengthen the resilience of vulnerable communities, the initiatives we launched to protect tropical forests, the efforts that we're making to make sure the transition to the clean energy future is rooted in equity, so it's not just the wealthy who benefit. Many of you here today have emphasized in your activism and leadership that climate action is not about sacrifice. It's about opportunity. It's about innovation. It's about prosperity. It's about justice. And it's about building a future that we can all be proud of, and the future that our children and grandchildren deserve. So I'm very honored to be in this fight with all of you, to work together to build on our progress here in Scotland in the months and years ahead. And now it's a particular privilege and pleasure to introduce someone who has dedicated years to the climate fight and who has done so much to elevate this issue around the world. At this critical moment, President Biden trusted him to rally the world around this cause, and we're all better off because he stepped up to take on this responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, John Kerry.
Thank you, Secretary Blinken, for a very generous introduction. More importantly, thank you for a terrific partnership. You've been wonderful in the way in which you've put resources at our disposal. Excuse me, fresh off a plane. And I personally am deeply appreciative for our long relationship in the Senate, White House, State Department, and now. And thank you very, very much. I assure Secretary Blinken and all of you that when President Biden called me and asked me if I would take on this job, I really didn't have to hesitate to say yes, because I knew, was coming to this job with greater resolve, greater ambition, greater commitment of resources than any president in history. And so it is a pleasure for me to work with an extraordinary team, which is all of government. Every member of the President's cabinet has been brought together by Gina McCarthy in a task force. No decision is permitted to be made according to the President's dictate unless we have considered all of the climate impacts and made our policy accordingly. I'm also very pleased that the United States is returning with a center at the COP. As you all know, the last time we had one was with President Obama, and we are all pleased that we are back and engaged in the way that the largest emitter, second largest emitter, largest economy should be prepared to be. President Biden is here. He's in the leaders meeting right now. He will be here through tomorrow night. We have dozen cabinet members, agency heads who are going to be here. We have more than 50 members of Congress who will come and take part in their session here. Let me just share with all of you, personally, this is not my first COP. nor Gina's. I was in Rio in 1992 with Al Gore and a group of senators when we first tackled this issue, after we first learned from a scientist, Jim Hansen, 1988, what was happening. So this has been a journey from Rio to the first COP, Bonn, to Kyoto, to many other, Katowice, Copenhagen, Paris, now here. And one of the things that I've learned most deeply about COPs is that while we've made progress, it's not the words that are going to make the difference, it's the actions. It's the commitments that are subject to being followed through and measured and understood. And never before have we needed to put more measurement together and more transparency and more commitment than today. When President Biden came to office in January, there were precious few countries, I mean, on one hand, I believe, that had any kind of commitment close to 1.5. Now, after the President's summit that he held in April until today, we now have more than half of the G20 nations, largest economies in the world, committed to real plans that can achieve 1.5. But most excitingly, we've been joined in this effort. Japan, Canada, the EU, UK, South Korea, South Africa. Now other countries not yet at 1.5, but countries that have historically hesitated from making commitments are now strongly on board with net zero 2050 and with plans for 2020 to 2030. Saudi Arabia, where I just visited a few days ago, not only has a commitment for, and the word Saudi Arabia is synonymous with big oil, big gas, but they are committed to net zero by 2050, and by 2030, they're committed to 50% of their power provided by renewables. South Africa, 1.5 degree commitment, ready to shut down coal plants, providing we and others provide the technology and the finance to be able to make the transition. So this is doable, providing we continue to raise the ambition here. The science, why are we doing this? We're doing this for the simple reason that the science and the scientists have made it clear, as a matter not of politics, not of ideology, not of some scatterbrain theory pulled out of the sky, but as a matter of mathematics and physics. We know what's happening. We know who's causing it, and we know what we must do to cure this problem. So that is the commitment President Biden has made, and that is what we are fully engaged in now. Dozens of nations are now joining in the methane pledge that we will describe more, I think, tomorrow. But that is a pledge requiring countries to begin to focus on methane, 20 to 80 times more destructive than CO2. A mandate responsible for half of the warming that has currently taken place. So we also are deeply focused on other near-term goals, but we're also focused on the long-term strategy. And Gina's going to talk about that in a little while. But President Biden just announced, and today we are formally submitting to the UN FCCC, and that is a companion to the NDC proposal the President has put in to achieve the 1.5 degrees. So, be clear about this. There are a group of nations that have altogether submitted 65% of global GDP is committed to achieve the 1.5 degrees. And obviously, if 65% is committed, our job is to try to bring the other 35% along. And your job is to help bring them along. So, our long-term strategy is just one of the initiatives. Here's what we hope, working in this center and around the entire COP over these next days, what we want to achieve. Number one, we want to raise ambition even further. We want to close the gap even further. We want to set down rules and understandings in the rule book of Paris, which is the other thing we want to do, is complete the rule book so we understand the transparency rules, we have clear market rules, and we are proceeding forward in a way that everybody understands. Second, we have to lay out the long-term road. We have to give people confidence that we're going to use this decade, which is the decade of decision and of action, in order to make everything else possible. Why? Because the scientists have made it clear. If you don't reduce enough between 2020 and 2030, you can't keep 1.5 degrees alive. And if you don't do enough between 2020 and 2030, you don't keep alive the prospect of net zero by 2050. That's just the reality. So that is what is guiding us here in Glasgow. In addition, the finance. No government in the world has enough money to be able to fuel this transition as rapidly as we need it. But the private sector does. And so we have been busy making the private sector our partners in this endeavor, which is absolutely essential. I'm pleased to say that the 6 largest banks in America have stood up and said, we will invest over the next 10 years a minimum, a floor of $4.16 trillion. Now we're beginning to talk about how we help these other nations make the transition. But we also need to find concessionary funds, funds that de-risk, funds that are blended with the multinational development banks in order to make this happen. So my friends, we know what we're trying to accomplish in these next 2 weeks. We know what we must accomplish in these next 2 weeks. And I am convinced that we have a terrific team, a great group of partners in these other nations that I mentioned, increasing ambition expressed by other countries. Just yesterday, who would have thought 6 months ago the G20 would sign off not only on 1.5 degrees, which they did, but on the termination of all financing for coal externally by the end of this year. So we've already made progress. Now we need to use these next 2 weeks to do the job that people in all of our countries around the world expect us to do. This is, as I said, the decisive decade. We could not, Secretary Blinken and I could not have a better partner. The President couldn't have a better advisor. A fighter from Massachusetts, I'm proud to say, but somebody who understands every intricacy of this issue, who led our Environmental Protection Agency, and who, like me, because of President Biden, has been willing to come back to rejoin this fight. Gina McCarthy.
Well, that was terrific, and it looks like I just left my speaker.
In every other way, she's fully collected and ready to go.
Hello, everybody, and first of all, thank you, Secretary Blinken, for all of your tremendous leadership, and to my partner in crime, Secretary Special Envoy Kerry. I want to thank you for all of your incredible passion, your enthusiasm, and your never-ending energy. So I'll try and keep up with you. But it's exciting to be here in Glasgow speaking as the first U.S. National Climate Advisor. And I'm here because the American people resoundingly not just support, but are demanding full-throated action on climate change. And they know that I will never give up. That's it. And they just don't want action on climate change, but they want the kind of action that is going to grow thousands of good jobs in our country, and that is going to protect our communities and give us ability to hand our children the kind of future that they deserve. That's what he wants, and he can get it. Because a year ago, November 2020, President Biden was elected with more votes than anyone in U.S. history. And he ran on a platform of taking bold climate action. So he has to do it. He wants to do it. He says he's going to do it, and we're going to get it done. That's what it is. And it's not just about clean energy economy. It's about advancing and delivering environmental justice. It's about time we invested in the communities that have been left behind, and that's exactly what we're doing. Listen, on day one, he wasted no time. President Biden rejoined the Paris Agreement day one. He restored U.S. climate leadership day one. And he reestablished our position that we were going to tackle climate change, not just at home and abroad, which is why we are here today. And now in Glasgow, he's renewing his commitment for swift and decisive action, including his Build Back Better framework, and that better be an applause line. Because if you can't get applause with $550 billion, then what's the matter with us? This is what commitment looks like. This is the largest investment to combat climate change in our history by tenfold. And it's going to let us reduce emissions well over a gigaton. And for all of those whispering, so how much is that? I'll tell you, that's 1 billion tons. 1 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions will actually be reduced in 2030 alone. We are talking about a big chunk of change here. And it's going to put us on a decisive path to achieving our climate goals of reducing emissions 50 to 52% by 2030, but well beyond that, it's going to advance our ability to achieve a net zero economy in 2050. Now, Secretary Kerry mentioned our U.S. long-term strategy. It's available today. We're releasing it because it will show you that there's not just one pathway to a safe and stable and healthy future. There are a number of ways in which we can move forward to achieve these goals, and that's exactly what that plan shows you. I don't care if we lose one issue or one action. There are many others we can grab and take advantage of, and we have the resilience and adaptability to be able to do that. And so we are going to move forward because the steps we're taking now is really building on long-term leadership in the United States. Because even though the prior administration didn't particularly like to talk about climate change, this country, our country, made progress towards a clean energy future despite climate denial. Even in the absence of federal leadership, who was it that stood up? It was our states, it was our cities, it was our tribal nations, it was our territories, our local governments. They kept advancing climate solutions from the bottom up. Guess why? Because that's how real sustainable action happens, from the bottom up. You know, businesses also kept seizing opportunities for sustainable practices, clean energy investments that kept our country growing. Our innovators kept making breakthroughs so that we could dramatically reduce the cost of technologies like wind, even offshore wind now. In case you don't notice, we're kicking butt on offshore wind and solar. We are moving forward. So this pathway for the United States is firmly set, and no one is going to reverse it. We have to move to a future of lower emissions, to a future of healthier communities, to a future of new jobs and industries and opportunity. We have to build a clean energy future because that's how the United States is going to win the 21st century economy. And that's how we're going to make sure that there is no community and no individual who is going to be left behind. That's the vision of President Biden. That's why he created the National Climate Task Force that my brilliant team runs, and I do everything they tell me. We're doing it because we know that climate isn't just about what EPA or DOI does. It's about what all of us can do with everything we have available to us. It's about stopping and thinking every time you're making a decision about whether you're benefiting the climate or you're taking away from our ability to deliver our kids a future. And if you keep thinking like that across the federal government, then you end up with cabinet leaders like President Biden has today, that you will see here throughout the next 2 weeks, that are going to tell you that they get it in spades and they're delivering it. And I couldn't be more excited to be here. I know we're going to lead by example in the United States. I know we're going to advance environmental justice every step of the way. I know that we are going to build the kind of future that our children deserve. Thank you very much. Oh my God, senility is setting in. What I wanted to also say is I was indicating the tremendous leadership at state and local governments. Would like to celebrate that, so if I could call up all of the leaders of All In, would like to take a photo up here just to celebrate the depth of commitment in the United States of America and all of your tremendous leadership. Come on up.